what's going on, fans? Man, Gen.YAHANNA here. I want to jump in here right quick with you because this week, as you probably already have heard, the Congressional Black Caucus is proposing a bill on police reform. The bill has some things in it that are on the right direction, but of course, we've been here many times before. So this will be a short one, but I'm gonna go into it real quick. Here's what one article said. The Congressional Democrats rallied Monday around broad police reform legislation, urging President Trump Republicans to rapidly embrace measures aimed at boosting law enforcement accountability, changing police practices, and curbing racial profiling. Right there alone, you know that before they could even get anything passed, they got to bring it before Pharaoh. And right now, they have an unfavorable Pharaoh sitting in the White House. So there's a very excellent chance that for the rest of this year, and if he wins a second election for the next 4.5 years, this will all be a waste of time. They may have an opportunity to look at it 4.5 years from now and countless number of deaths of black people. That's where they're at right now. Let's look into a little more. As Democrats put forward a unified response to the police killings of George Floyd in Minneapolis, which has sparked nationwide protests. Leading members of the party also sought, listen to this part good, to distance themselves from the growing calls from liberal activists to defund the police. Now wait a minute, these are the black leaders. It's your peoples, your black leaders sitting there and they want to make legislation, they want to make some reforms, but defunding these police departments is not an option for them. And if you look at the real defunding, okay, they make it sound like defunding means, okay, you're gonna disband all these police departments, which number one, they're not gonna do. But these police departments around the country have armed themselves up as though they're military soldiers. You might as well call them military soldiers. I'm gonna show you a tape about one New Jersey police department that armed itself up with tanks. Pretty much tanks, okay? They armored vehicles, but you might as well call them tanks. Check it out.
Suburban New Jersey law enforcement is acquiring armored vehicles used in Iraq and Afghanistan. Middletown now has an MRAP, which stands for Mine-Resistant Armor-Protected Vehicle, used to protect riding soldiers from exploding IEDs in war zones.
Our policy for this vehicle is to aid people and to protect them. It's not to be used in an offensive manner.
They make it sound like, oh, we're just going to use it for special operations and special things, but it was started in Ferguson, Missouri. That's where they began to start using that type of hardware and rolled that hardware out because they're looking at it constantly as though you are a threat. They're looking at you as a threat. They're looking at your people as a threat. They're constantly looking at you to see if you are the one, if you're going to rise up against them and come against them. Hey, if you like this video, man, and you like the ones we've been putting out, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification so we can let you know everything that's going on. Let's get a little bit more. Okay? Here's some of what the bill talks about doing. The Justice in Policing Act of 2020 would ban the chokehold. Banning chokeholds has already been on the books in police forces all over this country. And here's what they're going to learn, like I mentioned this earlier. More than likely, you'll start hearing about brothers being killed in the police station. They'll tell you that it's, you know, they had a heart attack or they had a stroke or something else, but it'll be the same because they are definitely being allowed to harm brothers with no repercussions. But let me get a little bit more. It would establish a national database to track police misconduct and prohibit certain no-knock warrants. Meaning this bill so far is really going to just do absolutely nothing. It's going to do absolutely nothing. It might do something with no-knock warrants, meaning they'll have certain rules that they can't just kick in your door, okay? Among other initiatives, okay? The bill, which has more than 200 Democratic co-sponsors, contains several provisions that would make it easier to hold officers accountable for misconduct in civil and criminal court. Something that they have never been able to do because of certain federal laws, which I mentioned earlier in this tape. There are certain federal laws that do not allow them that do not allow them to bring cases against officers for pretty much for murder. It's on the books that you can murder a brother if you're a police officer, if you reasonably believe that there's some danger to someone else or yourself. And of course, they just come back with it and say, I felt like I was in danger. And so that's why they usually get a pass, okay, in these type of cases. But again, black leaders don't want to defund them. They just want to pass a few initiatives and a few laws that are really already on the books. And the police chokeholds go back to the Rodney King days, when the Los Angeles police chief turned around and said that you have to handle black men with a special way because of their neck. Something about their neck being too thick or thicker than usual. In other words, he basically was saying, man, we have to lynch him in a certain way, because that's exactly all this is. Every one of these guys putting their knee on a brother's neck is about lynching. But let's go on. Check this part out. It says many of the proposals were crafted long ago, meaning past 2 terms of Obama, past terms of Clinton. They've been drafted this stuff, and they've been knowing about this stuff. These leaders, black leaders, have been known about this stuff for years. They know it, like everything everybody's screaming about, they already know. But haven't been able to do anything about it because, again, you in the kingdom of Egypt, man. And this is why the Lord have raised up prophets and disciples to separate his from those people, man. Okay? Let me get a little piece of what Mr. Booker said, okay? Cory Booker, if you don't know, Democrat from New Jersey. Here's what he said. Quote, there are Republicans who are interested in doing something on this topic, Booker said in an interview with the Washington Post. Booker, I'm not in any way underestimating the challenges we have before us in getting Republicans on this entire bill. And they already know Republicans are not getting on this bill because this ain't about their economics. This is about saving your lives. So already you looking at 6 months to at least 4.5 years before any of this could even come into play if Trump gets in office again. And it may go further because, again, Biden came out even and said he's not about defunding the police. The world of Caucasians believe that you are a threat. And here's what Mitt Romney said. Now remember, Mitt Romney marched with the protests, okay? And here's what he said. Mitt Romney said, who participated in the protest Sunday, was less than enthusiastic about the bill. The fact that there was no effort to contact any of us to have us weigh in on the legislation suggests it's designed to be a bit of a message piece as opposed to a real piece of legislation. This is Mitt Romney, okay? And Mitt Romney marched with the protesters. And he said, man, this is just like a message piece. Meaning they positioning themselves, they posing as though they're gonna get something done. He ain't even looking at it like it's something that could be could actually be done. And once again, with this kind of mindset, the Lord's people just continue to suffer and die. You ask yourself a question. How is it that you able to oppress and kill and murder a people for so many years? It's because of stuff like this. It's because those that we believe have the ability to change everything do not have the ability to change anything. Very little, if anything, they're able to change. They're able to position themselves, pose, look good, smile, shine, but not really take up an issue. It must, for you, if you're going to do anything to protect the lives of black people, Latino people, you must defund tons of the evil things that they're doing. They're being enriched in these departments to abuse the Lord's chosen people. Here's what Biden said. I don't support defunding the police. I support conditioning federal aid to police based on whether or not they meet certain basic standards of decency and honorableness, and in fact are able to demonstrate they can protect the community. So in other words, if they be nice, I'll give them some money. But I ain't cutting them off. I'm not defunding them. I'll put a few provisions in there so that they become nicer about it or make the reports a lot better. But I'm not really going to actually change nothing. This is the lesson we have to learn in this. And this is not a new lesson. Once again, this has gone on for years and years and years, man, when it comes to black people. And it's gone on in ancient times too. You know I'm going to the scripts on it to bring that part out. Here's what Biden said. Biden supports the urgent need for reform, including funding for public schools, summer programs, and mental health and substance abuse treatments, separate from funding for policing, so that officers, separate, he said, so that officers can focus on the job of policing. So in other words, we're going to make y'all some parks, man. We're going to give you some summer parks and some summer programs. We're going to give your children something to do, okay, so that they don't get into too much trouble. But we're not cutting the police off. That's the mindset that they're working with. This is the mindset that this is going to be the leader of the National Black Caucus if he wins this election. Which means what? Nothing will get done. Absolutely nothing will get done that'll change this situation. When really, this is a situation of oppression. The whole reason that you need parks, the whole reason you want to give after school programs and summer camp programs is because you know that these young people do not have anywhere to go because you don't have any jobs for them. You don't have any jobs for them because you maximize your corporations to suck every dollar out of these people. The Lord's chosen people getting every quarter taken from them when they should be with full power and ability to stand and strengthen themselves. And which is, once again, when they lash out, they lashing out to what? Corporations. They burning down the CVS. They burning down the AutoZone because those businesses should be owned by them and the funds should be going to them. But there's no discussion of economics on this table so far, except another handout, another pacifier, another lollipop, so that you don't be too upset. And this will go on and on. They'll just kill you in the police station. Too many cameras on the street, no problem. We'll kill you after the arrest. You resist arrest, we'll get so mad that we'll kill you after the arrest. Let me get a little more. The bill contains one proposal long sought by civil rights advocates. It would change qualified immunity. And that's the part I was mentioning earlier. Qualified immunity means that they get immunity that shields them from lawsuits. So if they split your damn head open, even if they do it in their own rage and anger, they supposedly can say, I had to do that in the midst of my job as a police officer, so you can't sue me. And as a result, they just abuse the Lord's chosen people. Captivity, man. Captivity, people. That's what this entails. And it only gets resolved when captivity ends. Christ is going to end this type of captivity. Here's what it says. The legal doctrine that shields officers from lawsuits by lowering the bar for plaintiffs to sue officers for alleged civil rights violations, man. They want to cut it down. That's going to be a hard bill to cut down. Judges is backing that bill up. And of course, why doesn't the average black person know about these things? Because it's not in their interest to tell you about it, because they don't want you to tell them. Take your behind in there and fight tooth and nail to stop these type of things from happening to us. We get a little more. Another section would change federal law so that victims of excessive force or other violations need only show that officers recklessly deprive them of their rights. The current statute requires victims, hear this good, the current statute requires victims to show that officers' actions were willful. Now, how can you do that? An officer comes and beats you with a nightstick. How do you prove that his actions were willful as opposed to him believing that it was necessary? Meaning, in other words, for you to prove your case, you're going to have to prove what was in his mind. For you to prove your case that your rights were violated, you're going to have to prove what's in his mind. That's how the law is set up as it is right now. So, of course, you are unable to do that. Of course, you're in a quagmire. You understand? You're in a situation where you can't even show what was in his mind. As a result, as usual, what happens? We get more destroyed. So right now, you can look for many, many more years before anything happens, just like you saw with Eric Gardner several years ago, Fernando Castillo several years ago, okay, and just like Freddie Gray in Baltimore several years ago. just like Ferguson, man, okay, and Michael Brown. All of these things happen in increments while these same groups of black leaders and people in power attempt to turn around and legislate their way out of this. When this is a economic issue. This is a issue of slavery. This is an issue of oppression. Okay? George Floyd, listen to the George Floyd, if he had used a fake $20 bill in that store, which I'm still not convinced of. But if he had done that, he would not have to do that if his neighborhood and his community and his people were economically sound, were economically strong. Our people are the most generous and loving people on the face of the earth. They demonize us as being the violent, evil ones. But our people are the most kindest. They're the biggest tippers, the most kindness, the one that'll let you go. You go into some of these so-called Chinese restaurants and you can't be 5 cents short. And they'd be like, no, a quarter short. You go into black and Latino businesses, not that you should be short, but you go into their businesses and they're far more kind to their own. But yet you're looked at like you're the demon of society, man. The returning to the Lord is how we fix this, man. Check this out. It would grant subpoena power to Department's Civil Rights Divisions to conduct pattern and practice investigations. It would just give more money to these civil rights groups for them to conduct pattern and practice investigations, not arrest these cops, not stop these groups, not end these maniacs running around in secret white supremacist groups, using that ability to harm and hurt more of the chosen people of the Lord. Looking for department-wide evidence of bias and misconduct, which is another joke. Okay? Looking for department-wide, which, listen to that part good. So if you got 1 or 2 in there, then you can't say it's department-wide. You have to have, the majority of them openly with proof that they're all white supremacists, which is rare that you ever get. You'd have to be trolling their Facebook pages to find out which ones were and which ones are not, because they almost never discover them in the police station. They discover these white supremacists online, never in the police precinct, and they'll just get wiser to it. The Lord's people need leadership that comes from the Most High. These black politicians, they got their agenda. They got whatever it is they're trying to do. Maybe some of it is good, maybe it's not. The problem is, it's in a system that makes it useless. That's why it's been useless this long. Let me read on a little bit more. And it says that it provides grants to state attorneys, attorney generals, to do the same. Meaning attorney generals can do some investigating too. Doesn't mean they'll find the criminals. It'll just mean you'll be able to find out who some of these white supremacists are. And you'll probably be able to throw them out of office. But will you throw them off the police department. But will you get anything actually done? I'm sorry to tell you, but no. You won't. Let's get a little more. The legislation also would limit the transfer of military-grade equipment to state and local authorities and make lynching a federal crime, which should have been a federal crime since the days of Jim Crow. It should have been a federal crime. But of course, it's not a federal crime because you are not as important as they are to themselves. Okay? And the military grade, you saw the clip, the military grade stuff is just ridiculous, man. It's ridiculous, the military grade equipment. And that was just a small sense. When you go back and look at the footage of Ferguson, they rolled out those kind of armored vehicles and soldier-style gear and soldier-style weapons. It was like a military force out there, which is what they believe in using against you, which is why it has been, it's basically the same Roman thing. You starve them until they rebel, and then you bring in forces to keep them down. Let me go back into an ancient time now real quick. I'm going to try to run through these. I'm going to go back into the ancient times in the Apocrypha, in the Bible, in the King James Bible, in the Apocrypha. After Alexander's death, he split up his kingdom into 4 parts. Those 4 parts, those 4 generals, his top generals, all took a piece of his kingdom. When one of those generals died by the name of Seleucus, an event took place in our kingdom. See, even with Alexander and all of them, they still could not fully take over our kingdom. They took over parts of our kingdom, but they could not take over it was still run by our people. They were still somewhat tributaries, and the Romans then began to, of course, extort them, which led to all the riots in 70 AD. These same riots that we are speaking about today, that has gone on today, went on during this time shortly after Christ's death. And it went on for the same reason. The Romans starved the Lord's chosen people to death to the point where they rebelled. And in their rebellion, they brought in the military, and then a war ensued, and they ended up destroying all of our people at that time that didn't listen to Christ. This is in the Apocrypha. 2nd Maccabees, 4th chapter, 7th verse. But after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called Epiphanes took the kingdom, he became ruler. Jason, the brother of Onias, labored underhand to be high priest. This is just an example of evil leadership. Okay, something that we're going to have to realize that we're going to have to deal with. We'll have to deal with this evil leadership and raise up the men of the Lord to be a new leadership that could really help and fix the situation that's going on with us. So this brother, Onias, who was an underhanded beast, became, worked underhandedly to get himself in power, which is what's done today in churches all day long. Churches are one of the arms of many of these black leaders, which lead us in the wrong direction. Let me read more. 8th verse. Promising unto the king by intercession that 360 talents of silver, and of another revenue 80 talents. Beside this, he promised to assign 150 more, if he might have license to set him up a place for exercise, and for the training up of youth, important right here, and for the training up of youth in the fashions of the heathens. So this cat was so slick that he said, look, make me the top religious leader among my people. Since you Romans is ruling over us and we tributaries to you, make me the top priest among my people. And if you do so, I will set up a Roman-style lifestyle. And in that Roman-style lifestyle, I will take the young men and I will fashion them in the way of heathens. I will teach them to be like y'all. And that's exactly what goes on today, man. Our young black, Latino and native children learn how to not just become educated, but educated in the mindset of our slave master. Educated in a mindset that gravitates them away from their own. Many of our people just look at the rest of their people as ghetto after they turn around and achieve certain heights in this society. They'll turn around and say, that's ghetto and this is ghetto, when they come from that ghetto. And they take that position simply because they believe that they have moved on to a higher education. Well, this went on back during the time of Christ. And they looked at it like it was a badge of honor when this guy was a slime ball. Check this out. And to write them of Jerusalem by the name of Antiochus. Meaning to write them means to get their mindset, to have them in the way of Antiochus, to think like him. Antiochians, okay, to put it right, to make them like him. 10th verse, when the king had granted, he had gotten into his hand the rule he forthwith brought his own nation to Greekish fashion. You want to understand how we come up out of here? We come out of this Greekish fashion. We come out of the American mindset, man. We come out of their sports and all. This is why the Lord shut it down with the coronavirus. He shut it down with the coronavirus so that you could get ready for that step that he just took with George Floyd. With George losing his life, now our mindset is in the right place to really learn what the Lord is trying to show us. But we better learn it, because there are those out there who are sitting in power and sitting in seats, and they are determined to make sure that we walk in the vein of the Romans, of the Greeks, of the heathens, when the Lord wants us to come out of that mindset and to get into the mindset of really serving the Lord, really caring for your brothers and sisters, really not seeking the greatness of this empire, but really seeking the greatness of Christ's empire. They teach you in church, you seeking the greatness of Christ's empire, but in essence, you really being taught to chase vain lucre, filthy lucre, vain cash. That's what you really being taught to do. Okay, unbeknownst to many of us, just because you become educated doesn't mean you have to become brainwashed in that education. But in many cases, that's what's being done today. Let me read a little bit more, all right? 11th verse. And the royal privileges granted of special favor to the Jews by the means of John, the father of Euphlemus, who went ambassador to Rome for amity and aid, he took away and putting down the governments which were according to the law. Now that's something. In essence, this brother turned around and went seeking gain from Rome for aid, funds, this and that, loans. And in doing so, he destroyed the parts of the government that were according to the law of the Most High. He destroyed the Lord's way, which is something to prepare for. He brought up new customs against the law. In other words, they wanted to run you out of really your own identity. And that's what they want to do today. After all of this, they won't get anything done with that. But you will get plenty of chastisement on how you got to get away from black culture. And in some things you do. Being a criminal to your own people. Being a drug dealer, which is nothing more than a witch or a warlock, is against the scriptures. But they'll use those to really rid you of your blackness, of your Latino-ness, of your nativeness. And that you cannot allow. That you cannot stand for. Okay? And I'll stop right there with that. Let me move on to Exodus, because again, even long, we're going back thousands of years. And once again, that's why the Bible is the greatest book on earth. It's the greatest book on earth because you can go back and examine everything that took place in ancient times and learn so much about the time you're living in. This thing going on with George Floyd and so many other brothers who have died at the feet of these heathens that have done such a horrible thing to the Lord's chosen people of God, that it is, you could look at it and examine it and see the pattern and see what's going on. Anyway, Exodus 5:14, this is with Moses. Many of you know this scripture, one of my favorites as well. And the officers of the children of Israel, which Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them. So the taskmasters took a bunch of our people and put us over the mass population. That's exactly who the National Black Caucus is. That is exactly who your reverends are, your imams are. But they have to operate different than they've been operating. Because the way they operate now is not how the Lord wants them to operate. Let me read on some more. And had set over them were beaten and demanded, wherefore have you not fulfilled your task in making brick both yesterday and today as herefore? So they got on their case that the people were not making the bricks. And of course, they set up the situation so that the people could not make the bricks. They took away the straw and then beat the people at the task, beat the leaders of the children of Israel, the officers, beat them after they had taken away the straw and said, yeah, man, what the hell is wrong with you? Why y'all ain't getting your bricks on? And meanwhile, they're saying, well, how could we get our bricks on when you took the straw away? Because in other words, they got them up into a trick bag. Let me read on. Exodus 5:15. Then the officers of the children of Israel came and cried unto Pharaoh, saying, wherefore dealest thou thus with thy servants? 16th verse. There is no straw given unto thy servants. And they say to us, make brick. And behold, thy servants are beaten. But the fault is in thine own people. Once again, these were black leaders. Black leaders who were trying to negotiate with Pharaoh. That's why he said the fault is in thine people. Because our people were the ones making the brick. Pharaoh's people were the ones receiving the brick. Which is so how it is today. We're the ones laboring in the empire. They're the ones receiving the benefits in the empire. And these leaders tried for hundreds of years. Remember, Moses came along. The children of Israel had been in captivity almost 400 years. He had to go on until he was 80, 430 years before they got up out of that captivity. So after hundreds of years, these black leaders who were being beat down by Pharaoh was on Pharaoh's case like, man, why are you doing this to us? It's your people doing this. And that's exactly what is going on today. They're going to go in there and try to negotiate with Pharaoh and Pharaoh's people, when the issue is with Pharaoh's people. The issue is with them, not with us, but with them. And how does it get resolved? By men of the Lord. If they politicians will try for hundreds of years, they'll keep trying. They get paid well to try. They get paid well to attempt to do these things. But the earnest expectation of the Lord's people is in the disciples of Christ that turn to the Lord. Then you do that and you will see a change like you've never seen before. You let these brothers wake up to the truth and change their lives, and you will see something you have never seen before. Let me get some more. Okay? Here's what Pharaoh came back and said, which is also what will happen in this empire. And it has already begun happening with jobs like Uber and Lyft and jobs where you deliver food. They've turned basically brothers and sisters into cab drivers and delivery boys. They just give it sophisticated names, sophisticated apps, and switch it up. But really, that's that you're really being pushed into harder, more menial jobs, and many of which you can't even do full time to receive a decent paycheck. So in essence, they have stepped up the labor, but expecting the same results. Not lowering the rents, not lowering the pressure, but expecting the same amounts. Here's what Pharaoh said. But he said, ye are idle. Ye are idle, meaning you don't work. You don't want to hold a job. Therefore, you say, let us go and do sacrifice to the Lord. And because you don't have those jobs, you start serving the Lord. Let me tell you something so deep about this here. Like, black people should seek out the Lord, and not just because you go to church. You seek out the Lord will answer you. And when he answers you, he will tell you to do things you otherwise would not do. And the freer you become from the brutal oppression of an empire, the more you will cry unto your Father in heaven, and he will fix that situation. Pharaoh saw this. Pharaoh said, man, you keep crying unto the Lord simply because you're idle. I need to put more burdens and labors on you. Here's what he said in the 18th verse. Go therefore now and work, for there shall no straw be given you, and ye shall deliver the tale of bricks. And as you go back all the way back into this story, then all of this was strictly based on oppressing us to keep us a lower class. Meanwhile, the whole time the Egyptians was acting like everybody has an opportunity. You see how great Joseph was. So how can you say that the Egyptian empire was racist when in fact Joseph said they were racist? And that's our misconception today. You hear the proponents of liberalism shouting and screaming and raising a banner that liberalism and unification and all people are created equal, and that all of this can be achieved in this empire, when in fact it will never be achieved. It will never ever be achieved in this empire. And they'll tout Martin Luther King the way the Egyptians touted Joseph. Egyptians said, look at Joseph. We put Joseph and made him vice president or viceroy in the kingdom. Don't call us racist. We made him viceroy. And it fooled the children of Israel into thinking, well, they can't all be racist because they brought Joseph up. And so they went on and on and on and on for 400 years. They got killed and murdered and worked to death for 400 years. Until finally the Lord raised up someone who would not listen to that nonsense. And you should not listen to it now either. Here we are 400 years later. You should be looking in a different direction. And that direction is into the truth. Let me go on. 19th verse. And the officers of the children of Israel did see that they were in evil case. They saw that we in trouble, man. These people are turning on us completely. And that is what will happen later as well. Eventually, they'll turn on these black leaders because they'll see that the rest of Black America, Latino America, and natives are not listening to them. And as they see that they're not listening to them, they will begin to come down hard on these leaders. They will begin to ignore these leaders. They will begin to put further pressure on the Lord's people. And in many cases, it has worked in the past. It has made us go and grind ourselves to death to make sure that every empire in the world continues to live good and deliciously. But the Lord is going to end it. You are living in the time of the end. That's what's about to happen. Let me go back over 19th verse. And the officers of the children of Israel did see that they were in evil case. And after it was said, ye shall not diminish aught from your bricks of your daily task. 20th verse. And they met Moses and Aaron, who stood in the way as they came from Pharaoh. Because Moses and Aaron had went in and spoken to Pharaoh during this time. Remember, they were in there negotiating with Pharaoh about the economics of the poor Hebrews. And Pharaoh's solution was, you going to work harder with less resources, because this idleness that I see is causing you to call on your God to deliver you from these people. And believe you me, they're going to find plenty of work for us. But it will be the most menial and grinding work you could think of. And it will be, you will think it is because, it's tough times, when it will be none of those things. It will be simply to keep you oppressed. Because Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and demanded that they govern themselves. That they demanded that they be freed from the tyrannical reign that he had on them for so long. But the negotiators, the different leaders of our people from back then, were furious with that attitude. They were furious that you would have that attitude. Let me go on, next verse. And they said unto them, the look upon you, God curse you, is basically what they were trying to say, and judge, because you have made our savor to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh. Meaning, you made Pharaoh look at us in a bad way. You made savors like the good smell of food. Like you smell good food, when they say it has a savory flavor or a savory smell, meaning it's a good smell. But they're trying to say Pharaoh used to look at us in a good way, but now he's looking at us in a very angry way. And when you see that happen, then you know you've accomplished something. When you see white Republicans and the rest of the empire begin to be angry with the National Black Caucus and be furious, not working together with them, but angry with them, then you're going to know that you are shifting the tides towards the end. You're going to know that we are far more closer to Christ's return. This is an insight for you, man. It's an insight for you to really see the signs to look for on what is the meaning of the end of the world. So let me read 21 again. And they said unto them, the Lord look upon you and judge, because ye have made our savor to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of his servants, to put a sword in their hands to slay us. At that time, it was you could get killed, because that's how vicious the Egyptians were. And guess what? It's the same today. That's how vicious they've been on killing black people. Black leaders were getting knocked down and beat up and punched in the face and arrested. Reporters, black, Latino, and native reporters were being arrested and locked up. That's the fury of your slave master. And that's what they were saying to Moses. You're going to get us killed trying to do our job with negotiating with Pharaoh and his people. You are interfering with that when it was the Lord's plan to interfere with it. Let me read on. 22nd verse. And Moses returned unto the Lord and said, Lord, wherefore hast thou so evilly entreated this people? Why is it that thou hast sent me? So Moses, of course, not getting the full grasp of the Lord's program at the time, he began to doubt what is going on here. I went in there to Pharaoh, yet Pharaoh put an even heavier burden on the Lord's people. And let me tell you something. The day we pick up on that, the day we learn the lesson that God taught Moses, is the day we begin to truly wake up. Because if you could learn how the Lord went back to Moses and showed Moses, then I'm going to free these people. Don't you pay no mind to what Pharaoh did. And then going on into the story, the 6th chapter and 7th chapter. Don't pay no mind to what he did. I'm going to free these people. You just go and raise them up to be righteous the way I want you to do. And by doing that, you're going to see what I'll do with them. And he, sure enough, he played Pharaoh. We all know the story. And they walked up out of there. So that's something else. One last one real quick. And we'll call it a show on this one. This is 1 Peter's New Testament. 1 Peter's speaking diligently about how a man of God should be. 1 Peter's 5:1. Here's what he said. The elders which are among you, I exhort, who have also an elder and a witness of the suffering of Christ. He was there. He saw it. He saw what Christ went through to try to deliver these people. And also a partaker of the glory that shall be revealed. It also should be understood that those same religious leaders are the ones that got Christ killed. It is very important for you to know these things, because otherwise you will be led to the slaughter. Okay, 2nd verse. Feed the flock of the Lord which is among you, taking the oversight thereof. And when he say feed the flock, he ain't talking about food. He's talking about educating the flock on how to serve the Lord and not be fooled by their taskmasters who negotiate with Pharaoh. Here's what he said. Not by constraint, but willingness, meaning don't do it with pressure. Don't do it with force, but willingly. Be willing to do this for them. Not for filthy lucre. Don't do it for the money, but for but of a ready mind, because that's what your religious leaders do. They do it by constraint. They do it with, holding back. They do it with, with fetters on their hands. And they do it not willingly. They do it almost with a hatred of their own people. I'm not saying anybody specific in the National Black Caucus, but as black leaders in general, especially religious leaders. And of course, it says not for filthy lucre. We know what the teachings in church are. The teachings in church have long left teaching about God and are now teaching about prosperity. And it's so amazing. And it's such a good tool when you want to oppress people. When you starving people to death, it is such an excellent tool to have your religious leaders teach that somehow, some way, through a miracle, they're going to get some money to deal with all their suffering and their pain. It is such a hustle that will last for years to come, because those people will constantly believe that someday, somehow, a miracle will happen and they will get a piece of what you've been receiving in this kingdom, when in fact you are sitting over them as a religious leader, getting rich off of them, and they have no prospect of prosperity, because you as the religious leader and your politicians who are over you have no plan to ever change their economic situation. Even in the wake of this, George Floyd, the focus should not be on the police department. Those white supremacists wouldn't have a job if black people owned all the businesses, if black people employed all the people in their cities, if black people sat down and made all the laws, because they have all the economics, because they run all the businesses. It would change their education and all of that. But instead, you want to pass a few pat on the back laws to make everybody feel good by giving a smack on the wrist to the police departments for one of or four of their white supremacists, when they're the smaller of the bigger problem. The bigger problem is you refuse to go to Pharaoh and break the chains off of the Lord's chosen people, man. Or if not, go directly to the people and say, this is what we should do to change the economy. You barely have ever even used your old school method by Martin Luther King himself. Martin Luther King boycotted the buses. You feared to boycott AutoZone or Walgreens or Rite Aid. You don't dare do it because, of course, you know that your slave master will defund and remove you from your seat. when that was a small tool used by Martin Luther King in the past that could have done so much more for you economically these days. But instead, don't worry, Joe Biden will build some parks and some after-school programs and some summer camps, and everything will be fine. Everything will be wonderful, man. So that's it for me, fam. I'm out of here, man. I'll see y'all on the next one. Y'all stay strong. See you live. Join me live every Monday night, 9 p.m. We do it up every Monday night. New videos every Wednesday and every Saturday. Check me out on this very same channel. Community posts several times a week. Let's stay in touch. Tell me what you think. Give me your comments. Especially give me your comments if you disagree. You disagree with what I'm saying and you feel like something can actually be done through this method. I want to hear from you. Let's talk about it. And if you disagree, my usual people, please let me know and let everybody else know that you agree with me and you know that that is not the route. Let's get the dialogue going. I'll see y'all on the next one, y'all. Shalom. I want you to stay strong in the spirit of the Lord. Hey, listen, if you like this tape, hit the like button and share it, man. Hit the share button. Everybody share it to their own personal Facebook accounts. Share this video, man, to wake up brothers and sisters all over this earth. Hit the like button. Check me out Monday night. I'm live every Monday night. I bring the heavy hitters in. We do it up live right on this same channel. I'll see you then, Israel. Y'all take care. Shalom.